am a monster hunter, but the nightmares I uncovered from the shadows will haunt me forever. I never should have opened that door. One morning, I was sipping my coffee, the world outside buzzing like a beehive. The sun was shining, birds were chirping. Everything felt normal. Yet there was an itch under my skin. I should have listened to it. I should have seen the signs. I stood up, moving towards the hallway. The air felt colder than usual, almost heavy against my throat. Shadows danced in the corners, flickering as if they had a life of their own. I hesitated, an unease gripping me. That door had always been there, painted a dull gray like forgotten secrets. I glanced over my shoulder. The house was silent, too silent. As my fingers brushed against the cool metal of the doorknob, a low whisper sailed through the air, a sigh, or maybe a warning. I heard noises I couldn't quite place, like a distant voice calling my name, or the soft thud of footsteps in the dark. I stood frozen, feeling the chill creeping up my spine. My heart raced. I shouldn't have been here. I should have turned back. Perhaps I could have just locked the door, stayed in my safe haven among the sunlight and the daytime hustle. But curiosity pulled me toward the unknown. Finally, I twisted the knob, pushing the door ajar. The creak echoed through me, sending a shiver that felt like needles. The darkness beyond swallowed the thin stream of light, thick like ink. I glanced inside. The air stank of rot and something oddly metallic. I took a step, almost forced, as if an invisible hand guided me. Shadows writhed, mocking my presence, and a felt chill settled into my bones. Then, a loud crash. Something fell. I whipped around, my eyes wide. Silence followed, but it was the kind that screams. The whispers returned, louder, more insistent. I felt it. There was something there. Suddenly, a figure loomed in the dark, just a blur at first. My lungs tightened. It moved closer, gliding effortlessly, like a dark cloud rolling in. My breath hitched. I wanted to scream, but the sound died in my throat. The figure stopped just outside the light, a grotesque outline dancing with menace. I could hardly breathe. The air throbbed with tension. Then, just as quickly as it had appeared, it dashed back into the darkness. I could feel it. The energy shifted. The door slammed behind me, trapping whatever horror lurked within. My heart raced, and panic clawed at my chest. What had I unleashed? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. My hands trembled as I pressed them against the door, feeling the wood vibrate with a pulse that felt too alive. I had a fleeting thought to throw myself against it, to escape this nightmare, but my legs felt rooted in place. The whispers crescendoed, weaving in and out of sentences, turning my name into a haunting echo. Each syllable ignited a primal fear deep within me. Suddenly, I heard Ida's scraping sound against the door, slow and deliberate. My spine lurched as I peered through the crack, hoping to catch sight of whatever imprisoned horror lay behind it. The darkness seemed a living thing, breathing in sync with my frantic heartbeat. With an effort that was fueled by sheer desperation, I pulled away from the door, half-formed thoughts colliding in my mind. I needed to escape this house. But the pungent odor of decay grew stronger, an unseen hand clutching at my throat. I stumbled backward, my heart racing, my throat dry and scratchy. Then, without warning, the shadows coalesced, swirling like a storm around me. The air turned cold enough to see my breath, and I could feel an oppressive presence leaning towards me, pushing against my skin as if trying to invade my very soul. I squeezed my eyes shut, desperately wishing for the split-second oblivion of sleep. When I opened them again, I found myself staring into the darkness where the figure had been. But something was different. It was no longer just darkness. It was full of eyes, thousands of them glittering like malevolent stars. Each gaze bore into me, chilling my blood, scratching at the edges of my sanity. That I spun around, searching for a way out. The hallway was a twisted mirror of itself, bending and elongating into impossible angles. There was no escape in sight. It felt as though the house had contorted into a labyrinth, swallowing me whole. Just then, the whispers turned to laughter, a cacophony of voices that twisted and bent around each other, drowning my thoughts under their mocking cadence. Join us, they taunted, teasing me with promises of understanding, freedom. I stumbled further down the corridor, glancing at the door I had foolishly opened. It stood still now, devoid of sound, yet I felt it pulse with some aching heartbeat. The figure was waiting on the other side. Something about its presence demanded I return, an unrelenting invitation wrapped in dread that I desperately raked my fingers against the walls, trying to find grounding, some physical connection to reality, as the whispers clawed at my sanity. As my fingers brushed over a cold, metallic latch hidden among the paint, a surge of hope ignited within me. I pulled it, and the wall creaked violently, revealing a hidden door, but hope came with its own price. The laughter escalated into howls, shrieking pain and sorrow. The eyes in the darkness turned into haunting shapes, tightening the grip of my terror. Something was very wrong. I forced the door open, but the air that rushed in felt saturated with despair, suffocating in its intent that I was met with a dimly lit staircase spiraling downward into a darkness that felt like it had no end. I hesitated only for a moment before entering, driven by a desperate urge to escape the shadows above. Each step I took echoed loudly, shaking the foundation of the house as if it too disapproved of my decision. As I descended, I felt the temperature plummet, my breath visible in the chilling air. A buzzing hum enveloped my ears, an undercurrent of fear that set my nerves on edge. The whispers transformed, morphing into fragments of memories, fragments that weren't mine, yet felt painfully familiar. They spoke of loss, betrayal, and unspeakable horror, each word lacerating my soul. Suddenly, I stumbled upon a small room lined with what appeared to be mirrors, but they reflected nothing of the shadows of the world outside. Instead, they showed grotesque figures shuffling, faces twisted in agony. It felt as if they were stories, echoes of lives snuffed out before they could begin. My heart raced as I realized they weren't merely reflections. They were souls trapped in a chrysalis of despair, forever intertwined with the house. Before I could turn and flee, a figure emerged from the farm, Aurora, face that twisted into something grotesque, yet achingly familiar. My stomach dropped as recognition washed over me. It was my own face. I saw myself looking back, but my eyes were hollow, devoid of life. It raised a gnarled hand and beckoned me closer, and I felt an unbearable weight of dread crash over me. Pulling me towards the glass, I reached out. The surface shimmered like a liquid, and in a moment of horrifying clarity, I understood the choice laid before me. I was at the precipice of becoming something else entirely, a marionette dancing to the tune of the darkness. And then, as I prepared to recoil, the whispers crystallized into a single command: join us, or be consumed. The mirror surged forth, ready to swallow me whole, and in that instant, the last of my courage faltered. The walls around me shuddered, and the reflections turned sinister, their shadows reaching out like dark tendrils. And just as I felt myself being pulled into the glassy surface, the ground underneath crumbled away, leaving me teetering on the brink of choice that would change everything. Darkness enveloped me, and I teetered on the edge of oblivion, suspended between my impending transformation and the chilling void below. I was trapped, a spectator in my own life, poised to fall into the depths of despair with my distorted reflection reaching towards me, its grip sinister and unrelenting. A sharp scream pierced through the silence, not from me, but from somewhere beyond the mirrors. It echoed off the walls, pulling me back just as the mirror crackled with intent, reminding me of the horrors lurking just outside my reach. Blood rushed to my ears, drowning the laughter that once filled the air, leaving only a bone-chilling silence in its wake. The walls quaked, and every mirror swirled with movement, shifting as faces emerged, horrifying visages contorted by grief and rage. I staggered backward, heart pounding, almost colliding with another mirror that promised a fate worse than death. The scream returned, but this time it was closer, more visceral, more desperate. It clawed at my heart. I recognized that voice. It was a childhood memory, a painful echo of my past that I had buried deep within me. My steps faltered as I felt the ground begin to tremble beneath my feet. Fear painted a tainted portrait of my reality, and as I turned to find its source, I saw it. A ghostly figure staring at me from within one of the mirrors, the face of my long-lost sister, eyes wide with terror. "Help me," she cried, her hands pressed against the glass as though she could break free. "It's here. It's going to take you too." The despair reflected in her eyes clawed at me until I was gasping for air. I could sense the presence lurking behind me, an overwhelming heaviness that dripped with malice, coalescing in the shadows waiting to pounce. Panic surged through my veins. It was all I could do to ignore the reflection of myself, urging me to step closer into the nightmare. "But I can't leave you," I shouted, a futile plea that hung in the air like a fragile thread. The truth stung. I had been running from memories, the darkness that followed me like a shadow, something I thought I could escape. But here it was, drawn to me like a moth to a flame. A sound, guttural and animalistic, slithered through the space, penetrating the thick wall of dread. The shadows shifted, stirring restlessly within the mirrors as though they could sense my fear growing. My sister's reflection twisted, fading and contorting, as the shadows behind her began to coalesce into something tangible. I had awoken a force that had been lying dormant, a dread that promised to engulf more than just me. "Find the heart." Her voice pleaded desperately, fading with each pulse of the darkness surrounding us. "You need to find the heart." "What heart? What are you talking about?" I cried, but the question felt hollow. The shadows pressed closer, curling tendrils creeping over the glass like eager fingers seeking warmth. I felt the echoes of 1,000 souls brushing against my skin, whispering dreadful secrets. Before I could regain my footing, the ground beneath me convulsed, sending me sprawling against the wall. I reached for my sister, but the mirror rippled violently as if her reflection was being dragged back into the void. "No, please," I screamed, but the darkness hissed and twisted around me. I in the mayhem. I saw a heart, a glowing orb pulsating with a sinister glow resting at the center of the room beneath the spiraling staircase. It throbbingly beckoned me like a beacon of desperate hope and mortal dread. The laughter returned, filling my ears and drowning my senses. As if the very walls themselves were mocking me, I felt a surge of adrenaline, my body springing into motion without thought. I knew what I had to do. The only way to save her, to save myself, was to confront the heart of this horror. As I scrambled towards it, the mirrors shattered, glass flying in every direction, revealing the terrible void beneath. The howls intensified, a chorus of tortured souls urging me onward. Just as I grasped the glowing heart, an icy hand shot out from the shadows, gripping my wrist with a force that paralyzed me. I looked back, horror flooding my senses as the figure emerged, fully a grotesque shape molded from every fear I ever had. My fear incarnate. Feeding off my despair. "I won't let you go," it snarled, twisting my name into a mocking chant that resonated in the hollow chambers of my mind. With frantic desperation, I clawed against its grip while the weight of the heart sizzled in my palm, filling my spirit with an ache that resonated through the decaying air. The darkness threatened to pull me back into the abyss, a tide that promised eternal torment. As the creature leaned in, its features becoming more defined, revealing that it was a horrific amalgamation of faces I knew too well, each a fragment of innocence lost, erroneously transformed into something terrifying. I heard my sister's voice overwhelm it all. "Remember who you are?" she shouted, despite her fading reflection trapped in the glass. As the shadows screamed in fury at her declaration, the heart flared in intensity, spilling light across the room. But before I could fully comprehend the power surging through me, a shout echoed from behind, and the ground shuddered violently. The entire room began to collapse, the mirrors imploding, the walls crumbling in a shower of dust and despair, and the tendrils of darkness grasped at my ankles, pulling me downward. "Choose!" The monstrous entity roared, its voice reaching a crescendo of agony. "Join us or perish." And as the heart pulsed furiously in my grip, everything exploded in a blinding flash, shattering the world around me. In that moment, as my vision faded into the swirling darkness, I felt myself being tugged in two opposing directions, one seductively laced with nostalgia, and the other promising a release from years of torment. And just as my mind began to fracture, I realized that perhaps, In this game of monstrous fate, the heart I clung to was only a prelude to a much larger horror yet to be revealed. The world beyond the blinding light imploded, spiraling into a tapestry of darkness woven with whispers and cries from all around me. As I struggled against the tidal forces pulling me in opposite directions, I felt the heart pulse fervently, a chaotic rhythm that resonated with both fear and longing. Then, as abruptly as it began, the sensation of being torn apart vanished, and I collapsed onto cold, hard ground that I gasped, pulling air into my lungs. But it was different, thick and suffocating, laced with the metallic tang of blood. My surroundings slowly came into focus, the dim light barely illuminating the contours of an expansive space lined with more mirrors, their surfaces cracked and warped, reflecting not just my form but countless dark shapes lurking just outside of sight. That I was no longer in the previous room, but rather what appeared to be an endless hall of reflections, a twisted maze of glass that extended beyond the shadows and into the unknown. The heart lay heavy in my palm. Despite the chaos, it remained aglow, casting sporadic flashes of light onto the shards of glass littering the floor. "Is anyone there?" I called out, my voice trembling, swallowed by the oppressive silence that returned. The heartbeat echoed ominously, urging me to follow its call, but I hesitated. My sister's warning clung to the edges of my memory like a spider's web. The heart. Just as I turned to reassess my surroundings, I caught the flicker of movement from the corner of my eye. A silhouette darted through the hall of mirrors, jagged shards dancing in its wake. My heart raced anew. Whatever it was, it felt alive and sinister, a predator that thrived on fear. "Show yourself," I shouted, projecting whatever bravado I had left. The murmurs of the dark seemed to swirl, amplifying my trepidation. Then, a shadow stepped forth, its features obscured. It was creeping closer, unraveling from the depths of the darkness. It paused, staring at me, piercing, soulless eyes fixed into my own. "I saw you," the figure rasped, voice a low hiss. "I watched you choose." "What do you mean?" I whimpered, realizing that every fiber of my being screamed to flee from this dreadful presence. But deep down, I knew there was nowhere to run. The heart chose you. And you chose the pain. Tell Mato you wish to remember, or is it better this way? It beckoned towards me with elongated fingers, each movement fluid and deliberate, as though reeling me into its web. "That I don't understand," I stammered, but the gaze from the shadow deeply unsettled me, scratching at the recesses of my mind. Suddenly, flashes of past memories surged around my, images of laughter, warmth, happiness, but they morphed into scenes of betrayal, screams, and blood that replayed like a horror show, each pulse resonating painfully within me. "Your journey has not just begun, but it must end," the figure whispered with a malicious grin, revealing rows of sharp teeth that gleamed in the dark. "It feasts on your soul. The heart knows what you truly are, what you must become." Before I could react, the mirrors around me began to vibrate violently, beckoning forth the figures trapped within them. Faces twisted in silent agony emerged, schools of spirits swarming around the shadow, grazing my skin with icy tendrils. Each reflection bore the anguish of memories that were not my own, like echoes of lives lost, voices crying out for redemption or vengeance. The cacophony of sound erupted, drowning me in an overwhelming symphony of despair. All at once, the heart in my grip flared, throwing shards of light across the venue, pushing back against the encroaching despair. "Find her!" The whispers surged, relentless, as my sister's voice joined the chaos. "No!" I screamed, tearing my gaze from the shadows, forcing myself to move toward the heart. Each step felt heavy, as if the weight of those trapped suffocated me. I squeezed the orb tightly, pouring every ounce of my will into its pulsing glow, igniting a desperate rally against the horrific presence looming before me. With a shattering clash, the mirrors around me splintered, releasing a dark fog that surged against the light emanating from the heart. I felt its warmth rise within, the chaos screaming to be quieted, even as my sister's shadowy figure flickered in and out of view. "Find me," she urged, the fragility of her plea resonating with the very core of my being. Panic melted into something sharp, a sense of purpose ignited by the urgency driving me. I turned back to the shadow that had drawn so close, feelings of relentless dread falling away. You are not the master of my fate, I declared, voice stealing with newfound strength. But just as the heart's radiance summoned courage, the shadow lunged, shifting into a swirling mass of darkness, devouring the light with a guttural growl. Desperately, I reached out, stretching my hand, as the world collapsed into utter chaos. The heart pulsed, fighting against the encroaching darkness, but the shadow dove deeper into the void, and its whispered laughter surged like a wave. You will never escape, for the heart desires what it craves, and it will be your undoing. The final word echoed through the tumult as the darkness surged forward, swallowing me whole. And just before everything went dark, I saw the flicker of my sister's distress, her reflection trapped, longing for release, and the heart flickering its last light, teetering on the brink of oblivion. In that moment of suffocating darkness, I felt a sudden jolt, as if being yanked back through a tunnel of raw horror and despair. Around me, the world tore apart before stitching itself back together, and the dissonant echoes of my sister's pleas pounded louder, matching the frantic rhythm of my heart. I landed hard on the same cruel ground, but it was no longer lined with shattered reflections. Instead, twisted branches surrounded me, clawing at the air with skeletal fingers. A dense fog hung heavily in the air, swirling like a living entity, coiling around my ankles and creeping up my legs. Panic stirred as the unsettling realization dawned it was no longer in the realm of mirrors. I turned, disoriented. The terrain felt alive, pulsating with a strange energy, as though the trees shared their heartbeat with mine. The twisted trunks were gnarled, their bark peeling like the skin of a long-dead creature, leaking a dark, viscous substance that pooled at their bases, soaking into the soil, disturbingly reminiscent of blood. Where was I? The heartbeat in my palm continued its relentless drumming, but now felt erratic, as if mirroring the state of the world around me. I stumbled forward, spurred by instinct, searching for a way out, a trace of my sister, or merely a clue as to why I was drawn back here, to this new nightmare. As I moved through the knot of trees, a low whispering curled around me, each word congealed with venomous undertones. They seek you. You are the one they want. It cooed, instilling a dreadful foresight deep within. Who are you? I responded, desperate and defiant, pushing through the instinctual urge to flee. What do you want from me? Freedom, the voice inhaled softly. Freedom for all of us who linger in the dark, forever in shadows. The trees shifted, their roots rising from the ground like serpents, entangling my feet. No, leave me alone, I cried, fighting against the creeping dread intensifying within my chest. Panic blossomed as I tugged at my legs, but the grip tightened, and the forest began to close in around me, sounds of rustling growing loud enough to drown my voice. Join us, child of light. The voice beckoned again, seductive and vile, coiling around my mind. You can break the cycle. Give enough for the heart, and we shall set you free. Suddenly, the shadows deepened, morphing into grotesque shapes, silhouettes of everything I held dear, twisted into horrific parodies of their former selves. My sister's face materialized among them. A look of torment spread across her features. It's a trap. Don't listen, she cried, desperately reaching through the thickening fog, her voice piercing straight through my heart. No, I'm coming, I screamed back, but fear's claws held me tight. The whispers grew frenzied, morphing into a cacophony of screeches and cries. Abandon hope. Abandon your light. All was dark and cursed, each murmur seeking to drag me down into despair. I squeezed my eyes shut, clutching the heart as if it were all that tethered me to sanity. The warmth pulsed in response, beating against the cold of the night surrounding me. Fight. You must fight, it urged, infusing me with rising determination. With a surge of renewed courage, I drew upon the heart's illumination, a blinding flare bursting forth as I opened my eyes. Instantly, the shadows recoiled, revealing a path, the silvery glow slicing through the dark, beckoning me towards my sister who remained ensnared among the dark spirits. Yet, pain broke through my resolve, the shadows striking back, clawing at my skin, creating a rift of fear. With every ounce of strength, I pushed against the terrifying tide and lunged toward her. The heart flared with intensity, illuminating the figures that writhed in rage, only to reveal faces I barely recognized, lost souls, trapped forever, seeking vengeance or reunion. Please, I cried out, reaching desperately for my sister's hand. I won't abandon you. The connection felt almost tangible, a bond stretching thin, and then, as if sensing my defiance, the ground trembled violently. Roots shattered from the soil, pulling tighter, dragging me backwards, towards darkness I could never escape. I felt myself slipping away, my grip on reality waning, but the breath of hope flickered. Then came a roaring, unholy sound that resonated through the forest, silencing the whispers in a moment of dread. Emerging from the depths, my worst nightmares took shape, a twisted coil of fur and crimson eyes fixing on me with unrestrained hunger. Run, run. My sister's voice pierced through the rumbling chaos as the monstrous forms spilled from the darkness, a looming mass of terror, ready to reclaim its feast. I took one last look at her, a fleeting image of the sister I knew, before the ground seemed to convulse violently, pulling me away. Don't leave me, she wailed, and the world shattered once more that I stumbled backward into the encroaching fog, an abyss of shadows spilling forth. And in that horrid moment, a surge of darkness lashed out, plunging its claws into my heart, snatching away the last flicker of light. Just as I was lost to the overwhelming shadow, I heard the most dreadful sound, a chilling howl that echoed across the cosmos with an affinity I couldn't understand. It resonated deep within, enveloping me as the darkness closed in, and I knew then that whatever had awakened was hungry, very hungry, and I was next on the menu. I was falling, a free fall through the abyss, pulled deep into a darkness where time no longer mattered. Memory fragmented into painful shards as I spiraled, losing myself to the distorted echoes of my pasta laughter drowned by silence, a warm embrace twisted into cold indifference. Suddenly, I landed hard on a ground that reverberated with a hollow thump, disorienting my senses. I opened my eyes, but the fog was thick, wrapping around me like a suffocating blanket. The very air felt oppressive, laden with a heavy, sweet stench that reminded me of decay. I pushed myself off the ground, fighting against the clammy grip of the earth that seemed to want to swallow me whole. As I regained my footing, the whispers began anew, a soft hissing in the wind that made every hair on my body stand on end. You shouldn't have come here. She was never meant to find you. Who are you? I shouted, my voice cracked and weak, drowned out by the cruel laughter that echoed in response. Each chuckle reverberated in the fog, writhing with malice and darkness, leaving me trembling in despair. I felt a cold breeze slither across my neck, freezing my blood. You think you can escape? This place feeds off your fear, your regret. Welcome home, child of light. The heartbreaking realization washed over me like poison. I was not only trapped in this cursed realm, but being hunted. Shadows moved just beyond the periphery of my vision, shifting and sliding through the fog, revealing grotesque forms, shambling towards me with unnatural grace. They were crawling from the fissures of my mind, memories distorted into nightmarish versions of themselves, old friends and family, twisted into caricatures of the people I once loved, their empty eyes filled with madness. Help us. They beckoned in unison, their voices warping into a soul-chilling harmony that grated against my very being. We've been waiting for you. It's time to feed. I stumbled back, terror paralyzing my limbs, but I forced myself to break free from the grip of despair, to think clearly. I had to find my sister. I had to save her from this waking nightmare before it consumed her as it had those lost souls. Suddenly, a blinding light pierced through the fog, setting the silhouettes into a frenzy, seething and screeching, retreating like roaches from the day. The warmth radiating from the heart in my palm surged again, fueling my resolve. I won't let you take her. I set off toward the light, pushing through the sorrowful wails of the tortured souls. They clawed at my arms, their icy fingers rendering my flesh in anger. You don't belong here. They cried, you can't leave us. The heart pulsed fiercely as if acknowledging the battle I waged within. I could almost hear my sister's voice echoing through the void, a fragile thread that anchored my heart amid the chaos. Find me. Dodging the creeping despair, I broke through the haze, standing before a massive doorway carved from dark wood and iron, veins of a sinister light flickering across its surface like a heartbeat in the darkness. At its center was a pulsating crystal, swirling ominously, casting reflections of faces I once knew, twisted in agony. I hesitated, staring into the depths of the doorway. Something hungered for my presence, a palpable energy thrumming against my soul. My breath quickened. It was a horrifying pull, beckoning me closer. No escape. I was drawn in. Enter, child. The voice slithered into my ears, sultry and beckoning, causing my heart to flutter in dread. The only way to save your sister is to embrace who you truly are. No, I gasped, the realization striking hard. I had to confront what lay beneath my light. The terror I never wanted to admit lived inside me. The darkness was relentless. My reflection began to fracture in the crystal, revealing sinister whispers of doubts, fears, and buried rage that consumed me whole. I turned to flee, but the ground shuddered violently. Shadows erupted from the doorway, tendrils of dark energy spiraling toward me like serpents seeking their prey. Panic surged as I spun around to run, but their icy touch coiled around my ankles, dragging me inexorably back to the threshold. The heartbeat in my palm burned with urgency as the last remnants of my will clashed against the tide of despair. I couldn't let them take me. I wouldn't offer them my heart. I screamed defiantly, "Am not your pawn," but silence fell around me, and for a brief moment, I thought I had escaped until I heard the sound that froze my blood. A deep, guttural growl echoed from the shadows, vibrating through my bones. Emerging something monstrous, a mass of skin and eyes, leaking darkness that slithered down like a waterfall of shadow. Its mouth split into a grin that revealed teeth sharp as daggers. "Welcome to your nightmare," it roared, the malice drenching every syllable. "You were born for this." The world around me shattered into fragments of light and sound as I braced for the inevitable. The heart flashed ominously, a heartbeat in sync with my own, and in that split second, a thought struck me, a realization that would change everything I knew. "Am I the monster?" I whispered, horror consuming me, as the darkness lunged forward, engulfing both me and the truth. The shadows swirled as everything around me became a grotesque theater of terror, the air laced with the scent of sulfur and rot. I struggled against the creature's grasp, its presence suffocating. The tendrils of darkness constricted tighter around me, wrapping around my limbs like cold chains. Each movement felt heavier, as if time itself conspired with the demon to seal my fate. "Born for this," it echoed in my mind, the words reverberating like a twisted lullaby. I felt the weight of its gaze, countless eyes reflecting my deepest fears, the very traumas I had buried and locked away. What did it mean? Was I truly deserving of this nightmare? Did I summon this darkness by simply existing? "Flee. You are not strong enough." A tortured voice screeched from the edges of the fog, but it resonated somewhere within me, urging me to embrace the horrors that clawed at my consciousness. The truth: I was drawn to the hunters of nightmares of my bloodline, not as an enlightened predator, but as a willing prey. The growl morphed into malicious laughter, echoing around me like endless thunder. "You feast on the fears of the lost, yet you are one with them. You are both light and dark, their savior and their tormentor." The heart in my palm pulsed as if attempting to break free from my grip, its warmth clashing against the icy despair. I had to regain control. Summoning every ounce of willpower, I pushed against the inky weight, breaking through the bindings of my doubt. "I didn't choose this," I shouted, rage igniting like wildfire within me. "You won't bind my soul." Suddenly, the creature lunged forward, its maw open wide, a whirlpool of darkness threatening to swallow me whole. I threw myself sideways, ducking barely out of reach, my heart racing with fear and fury. A desperate plan sparked within, a way to turn this darkness against itself. "Unleash your power. Embrace the beast." The voice from the shadows hissed, seducing me with promises of strength. "You are more than fear. You are destruction incarnate." As I evaded its grasp, sharp claws grazing my arm, I envisioned the heart's light swirling within, mesomething primal and fierce, a beast hungry for the hunt. If this darkness wanted my fear, then I would give it something to truly fear. With a defiant roar, I let the heart's light fill every crevice of my being. I felt a surge of heat radiate through me, an embrace that turned my very desperation into a weapon. The shadows recoiled slightly, grinding to a halt as they shrank from the surge of radiance. "Go back," I shouted, the light erupting outward as I thrusted my hands towards the creature. The shadows screamed, a cacophony of anguished howls, as the brilliance clashed against the darkness, illuminating twisted forms sent to their knees. But the monster hissed, undeterred, darkness swirling around it, regrouping almost playfully. "You think your light can banish me? I am eternally woven into the fabric of your existence. Then I will forge a new thread," I cried, unleashing a pulse of blinding energy that caused the ground to shake beneath me. The light sliced through the fog like a blade, illuminating the truth hidden in the shadows, the myriad faces of the lost, trapped souls intertwining with their dark counterparts, their mournful cries echoing the confusion of their plight. Among them, I saw Hermie's sister. Her face was pale, eyes glazed with despair. "Help me," she called, her voice a whisper lost in the storm. I felt the walls of my heart shatter, every ounce of clarity replaced with the agony of fear. As I stretched my hand toward her, the darkness surged, a furious tidal wave, swallowing the light I had conjured and plunging me into a frenzy of nothingness. The fingers of despair curled around my throat, constricting, choking out my cries. "No," I gasped, struggling to breathe, pulling myself back to the surface of reality. "You won't have her. I'm not afraid." Suddenly, a fissure opened in the abyss, a gaping maw filled with malevolent energy, and from it emerged a figure cloaked in shadow, a nightmarish hybrid, part human, part beast, its eyes glowing with malevolence. It spoke, each word curling like smoke through the stillness. "You will embrace your fate, and through your sister's anguish, your true nature shall awaken." Terror crashed over me as multiple paths unfurled from the darkness, each leading to unspeakable horrors, the manifestation of what I had feared all along. I was never just a hunter. My existence thrummed with a darkness that yearned to awaken. Before I could comprehend, the shadows began to pull at my sister, tugging her into the chasm from whence the figure emerged. My cries mingled with her terrified screams as they echoed through the void, her face contorted in fear, the very essence of anguish as I reached for her, yet each attempt sent me deeper into the consuming darkness. Time stood still as the figure advanced, and a heart-wrenching choice loomed before me. Would I succumb to my own terror and join my sister in the depths of despair, or would I rise and confront the monster I was destined to be? "No, this isn't the end," I screamed, battling the encroaching shadows, teetering on the precipice of my own nightmare. But the answer lay just out of reach, and as I lunged towards my sister, a blinding flash erupted from the figure, erupting into a maelstrom of madness, dragging us both into the unknown. Would I become the thing that haunted my family, or could I rewrite the fate scripted in the dark? And then I was falling again, but this time, I was not alone. The sensation of falling was a cruel joke. It was not the liberation of flight, but a disorienting plunge into an abyss that played tricks on the senses. The air thickened, turning to liquid shadows that clung to my skin like a suffocating shroud. I gasped for breath, but each mouthful of the Stygian void only filled my lungs with the foul stench of decay and desperation. "Stay with me." My sister's voice, once so clear, had begun to warp, dipping into a chorus of wails that clawed at my heart. I reached for her hand, desperate to reclaim the only tether I had to humanity, but the darkness warped our connection, twisting her image into an amalgamation of suffering and fear, every frayed edge gnawing at my sanity. The figure wrapped in shadow loomed above us, its eyes gleaming like two pools of hellfire. "You have awakened that which you cannot control," it huffed, each word dripping with malicious delight. "What you deem as light exists only to illuminate the depth of your darkness." With a piercing cry, I launched myself towards my sister. "No, I won't let you take her. I can't let you take me." I twisted in the air, anguished thoughts swirling like storm clouds overhead. I could feel the raw pulse of power inside me, thrumming like a beating heart, but it was eclipsed by tidal waves of despair threatening to drown me. As I fell, the ground beneath shifted, revealing a terrain made of writhing shadows, serpentine tendrils coiling like live wires, eager to ensnare. Spiders, large and grotesque, emerged from cracks, their bodies rippling with dark energy, eyes glinting with hunger as they watched my descent. The earth trembled, and the inky landscape shifted beneath me, revealing glimpses of tortured souls embedded in its depths, eternally tormented. Feed the monster, and it will take what you hold dear. The voice echoed again, seductive and cruel. You think you can rescue her? You cannot save what is already lost, that I roared defiantly, calling upon the light within, but it flickered, struggling against the overwhelming darkness. The shadows drew closer, teasing me with those I had failed to protect, each twisted face of sorrow etched in the tendrils that swirled around me. Friends who had once been alive, all victims of the nightmares that had haunted our family for generations. Suddenly, my sister's face broke through the shadowy veil once more, her expression softening even in the cacophony of horror. "Please, I'm scared," she whimpered, and the broken sound shattered something deep within me. Her fear pierced through the dark, igniting a spark of determination. "Get away from her," I yelled, my voice brimming with a ferocity I hadn't known I possessed. I summoned the heart's light, channeling my pain and rage into a blinding wave of energy that slashed through the shadows like a sword. But the shadows merely laughed, as if they were content to play a game of cat and mouse, reveling in my struggle. "You think you can harness it?" The darkness shrieked, an unearthly cacophony rising as it wrapped around my sister. "You will only draw closer to your own demise." I lunged forward instinctively as the ground beneath me began to quake and split, threatening to swallow us into oblivion. The shadows contorted, twisting into grotesque forms, lost echoes of tortured souls, their hollow eyes pleading for freedom mixed with palpable malice. "Join us," they whispered in a twisted choir, their voices weaving through the darkness, pulling at the corners of my mind. "You could be one with the night, to embrace the comfort of eternal darkness. Power awaits." That I in that moment. The shadows latched onto my fears with claws of cold steel, revealing visions of my future twisted by their influence. Me sister, trapped in terror and despair, our family forever haunted and alone. And oh, I shouted, clenching my fists. A flicker of light surged through the darkness, blinding me. "I will not be your pawn." The pulsating heart in my hand became a beacon, summoning the force I fought so hard to extinguish. As it overflowed with energy, it burst forth, illuminating the void with threads of brilliant white light. But then the figure, the true nightmare, stepped in front, its grotesque form shimmering with malevolence, drawing power from the shadows that decorated its being. "You should have accepted your fate, child. Can't you see? You are becoming the monster you feared." A cold dread snaked through me. I felt the once warm light begin to dim, and the shadows pressed in tighter around my sister, her cries echoing in my ears. "Help me. Don't let them take me." With a forceful shout, I smothered my doubts. "I choose my own path," I screamed, unleashing a torrent of light fueled by every ounce of love and hate I held within. The darkness flickered, but I could feel the shadows rallying once more, siphoning my strength for their own sinister purposes. Fifth level of despair, the figure taunted, with a satisfied smile that revealed razor-sharp teeth. "This is only the beginning." And just as I felt the last vestiges of my light slipping away, engulfed by the conclave of shadows, a sudden ripping sound pierced the darkness. A rupture echoed in the void. I turned, face pale, as a new threat materialized, a colossal maw opening wider, revealing teeth that seemed to glimmer with insatiable hunger, eager to devour us whole. Before I could react, the darkness surged forward hungrily, and I heard my sister's voice, faint but filled with urgency. "Find me, don't let them take me." And then it all faded. Flat lines of light and screams collapsed together in an all-consuming void, as I was dragged away from the last flicker of warmth and into the clutches of the beast that threatened to consume us both. "What will you sacrifice to redeem your sister?" The shadows whispered, their breath chilling my very soul. In that instant, the ground beneath me vanished entirely, and I felt the all-consuming darkness swallow me, leaving only one haunting truth echoing in the recesses of my mind. In the dark, you find yourself, but the shadows may decide who you truly are. The silence that followed the maw's ravenous snap was more stifling than the darkness itself. I drifted in a realm untouched by light, my senses stripped bare, like a raw nerve exposed to the chilling winds of despair. Unseen, the shadows scuttled around me, their presence a tightening noose that constricted my breath, and the memories of my sister echoed like a cruel laughter, reverberating through the void. "Find me," she had pleaded, her voice a ghostly caress that lingered in the air, desperate and poignant. The shadows, a mass of writhing malice, coalesced into figures that threw my mind back to those I had lost, their faces stretched into grotesque masks of anguish. I staggered backward, struggling to comprehend the twisted tapestry of this dark world that sought to ensnare me in its web of regret and sorrow. That I stumbled, clawing my way through an endless expanse that pulsated with an oppressive energy. Each step whispered of danger, and the ground beneath me felt unstable, shifting like a living entity intent on dislodging my very existence. I had to push past the gnawing terror that gnawed at the edges of my sanity. I had to fight my way back to her. Images started to swirl around me, hazy glimpses of tortured souls replaying their last moments, families torn apart, friends abandoned, and each haunting visage dripped with despair. I could hear them, their whispers a dissonant symphony promising dark secrets, urging me to surrender to the shadows that longed to claim my soul. "You belong here," they chimed, "with us in eternal sorrow." The illusion of safety made it tempting to embrace the darkness. But then I recalled my sister's frightened face, her eyes wide with terror, reaching through the shadows not just for solace, but for salvation. I could not abandon her, I would not. "Release me," I screamed, the cry piercing the barbed silence like a knife. The shadows recoiled slightly, their amusement faltering. "I am not yours to take." A low rumble echoed through the void, a growl that resonated deep within me. It was as if the very fabric of the dark landscape wavered with agitation at my defiance, manifesting into a storm of shadows that swirled uncontrollably. I felt the energy shift, a tug of war for my essence, clawing at my fears while whispering words that threatened to seduce me into their fold. But amidst that tempest, a sliver of brilliance emerged, a memory of warmth, laughter, whispers of love born in the light of day. I called upon it fiercely, closing my eyes and summoning every ounce of light I could muster. It flickered at the edge of my consciousness, standing defiant against the tide of ruin. The shadows twisted around me, roaring with anguished fury, growing fanged mouths that gaped wide, seeking to absorb the light I clamored to protect. "You will never find her," they howled. "In seeking the light, you will only lose yourself." Fueled by the luminous memories, I forged ahead, weaving through the skein of darkness like a flickering candle struggling against the wind. An echo rang through my mind. My sister's voice rose from the depths, poignant and clear. "I'm scared. Please, don't let them take me." The urgency in her words ignited a survival instinct that boiled within me, pressing me forward despite the rising dread. I stumbled onto what felt like solid ground, a rugged terrain littered with shards of regret, broken dreams lying scattered like lost spirits. Yet, in that fractured reality, a path began to take shape, illuminated by flickers of golden light. With renewed determination, I pushed onward, but the shadows recoiled, unfurling like claws around me, feeding on my fear. It was then that I heard a faint murmur, one that brought a shiver racing down my spine. "Look behind you," they beckoned, their sinister tones intertwining, forming a chilling symphony. I hesitated, the sheer weight of curiosity wrenching me back. Reluctantly, I turned, and just like that, the air cracked with energy, sending spirals of unrest through my limbs. There, emerging from the shadows, a figure cloaked in a shimmering darkness drew near, its face obscured yet distinctly familiar. And oh no, it can't be. My heart raced, breath hitching in my throat, as the profound dread settled over me like a thick fog. The figure shimmered with an unholy light, each heartbeat transforming the shadows into a viscous halo. "Did you think you could escape me?" the figure crooned, an echo that twisted the air with malevolence, the voice a haunting blend of all those I had loved and lost. "I am the darkness, and I am you." Just then, a howling burst shattered the silence, the monstrous maw resurfacing in swirling shadows behind me. a horrible hunger ravenous to consume everything in its path. I turned, terror-stricken as the shadows tightened around me, the engulfing tide of darkness surging like a tempest hungry for my surrender. "Join the abyss," the figure whispered, stepping into the light, its identity obscured by the swirling shadows. "And I will help you find her." The darkness closed in. The chorus of tortured souls intensified, and I was left at the broken intersection of choice and despair. To dive into the abyss and confront the monstrosity lurking within, or to forge forward and risk losing the last flicker of hope I had left. I teetered on the precipice of decision. A chilling laugh echoed, the shadows swirling and parting to reveal a new threatened army of specters rising from the depths, drawn by the scent of fear, eyes aglow with malevolence and longing. And as I prepared for one desperate final stand, I could hear my sister's voice piercing through the cacophony. "Help me, I'm right here." In that moment of darkness, as the shadows reached for me, I realized the true horror. What if finding her meant losing myself to the very darkness I fought against? What if I became the monster I sought to vanquish? And before I could find the answer, the shadows burst forth, enveloping me in a tempest of despair, dragging me under, where the monstrous truth of my existence waited just beneath the surface. I awoke, gasping, as if surfacing from a suffocating murk. The world around me spiraled, remnants of shadows flickering like discarded memories under a pale moonlight. The taste of iron lingered in the air, sweet like honey, yet sharp enough to cut. I blinked back the encroaching darkness that threatened to pull me back into despair, straining to see the forms that writhed around me. With shivering resolve, I pushed myself upright, shaking off the haze that clung to my mind like a shroud. The very earth beneath me trembled, groaning as if mourning the horror it had witnessed. I felt my heart thundering, a primal drumbeat against the chaos surrounding me. Each pulse punctuated a desperate longing. Me sister, her light buried under a mass of swirling shadows. If only I could reach her, to drag her back from the depths of the void. I staggered through the surreal landscape, a twisted collage of darkened trees and jagged rocks. Ghostly figures drifted through the velvet shadows, their hollow eyes glimpsing remnants of their own lost hopes, faces contorted into masks of anguish. And with each echoing wail, my resolve wavered. "Help us, save us," they beckoned, their voices a chorus of pain that sank deep into my bones. Yet I was not here to save them. I had only one purpose. My sister. A shudder coursed through me as I remembered the faces of my loved ones twisted into nightmares, lost to the abyss. The essence of fear coiled around my heart, but I swallowed hard, shaking off the memories that threatened to ensnare me. "This isn't the end," I murmured to myself, each word kindling a flicker of hope amid the oppressive dark. With every step, I pulled myself closer to the truth that lay buried beneath layers of fear. The heart in my palm pulsed steadily, its warmth spilling courage into my veins. And then I saw a hair-off flicker of softer light amidst the shadows, my sister standing there, trapped within a crystalline cage that shimmered with the specter's dark essence. "Please, don't leave me," she cried, her voice haunted yet filled with desperation, and my heart ached to reach for her, to pull her free from this looming nightmare. That I stepped closer, every inch an act of defiance against the malevolence that attempted to bind me. "I'm coming," I shouted, raising the heart high in my palm. The shadows recoiled at its brilliance, their howling intensifying, angering against the light that dared encroach upon their territory. "You cannot have her," I roared, fighting against the tide of darkness that clawed at my feet, whispering terrible truths that sought to give in to despair. But I lunged toward the cage, raising the heart higher. The shadows writhed and shrieked, their cries piercing the very cycle of my being. But the warmth within me surged forward. Just as the shadows bore down, something shifted, a churning tremor of Clarissa, piece of knowledge I had almost forgotten. I was born to hunt nightmares, to wield light in the dark, a descendant of bloodlines steeped in shadow. The pulse of the heart echoed with vigor, illuminating the paths woven in fear and blood, wrapping around the secret buried within. The heart's light cascaded outward, mingling with the darkness, unearthing the shadows trapped within its crystalline structure. The lost souls of my ancestors, the specters of every tragic tale weaved through our history. "Join us," they cried, siphon the darkness, be reborn in our image. But I wouldn't be swayed. I had gazed into the abyss, wrestled with its terrors, and emerged not merely a hunter but a protector, not just a name among shadows but a beacon of light. The cage surrounding my sister flickered, trembling against the light pouring forth from the heart. "Hold on," I screamed, reaching toward her, the darkness emitting a final agony-ridden shriek as the barriers of despair began to fracture. The specters recoiled, howling in fury as their grip weakened. That I poured everything I had into the heart, into the bond we shared, and felt the warmth erupt into a radiant vortex. With one final explosion of light, the cage shattered shards of shadow like fragile glass, scattering the darkness that had held my sister hostage for far too long. No. Came the resonating roar from the entity that had woven itself into the fabric of despair, its monstrous visage twisting in horror and rage. "You cannot escape your fate." But it was too late. My sister cascaded into my arms, light flaring as we collided, the shadows shimmering helplessly before the brilliance of our bond. "I found you," I whispered, the heart beating not just for me, but for both of us. But then I felt its presence lingering at the fringes of my consciousness. It crept and slithered, a dark tendril wrapping around a piece of me I had almost forgotten. ID fought against its pull, sworn ID banished it for good. But the enemy had been within all along. "You may have rescued her," it whispered, smooth as silk, slithering into the folds of my mind. "But can you save yourself?" "No," I shouted into the void, clenching my fists around the heart as shadows twisted anew in retaliation, screeching against the light. The heart cradled within the shadows' breast was calling. A choice had to be made. In that moment of devastating clarity, I realized the truth. It wasn't merely about saving my sister or confronting the darkness without. The real horror was the shadow lurking inside me, begging for release. I could harness it or allow it to consume me. The last flicker of the heart began to fade, the shadows creeping ever closer. And just as despair began to wrap its icy tendrils around my heart, I made my choice. I felt the warmth surge through me, but redefined. I would not just fight the darkness, I would dance with it. I would bind it to my will, weave it into my very essence and become the monster I was always meant to be. With a howl that matched the shadow's wails, I stepped into the tempest, embracing the shadows at the core of my being, and felt the world shatter into a kaleidoscope of light and darkness. Nothing in this realm was ever truly gone. With every heartbeat, I transformed into something anew, a monster entwined with midnight and dawn. And as the darkness swirled around us, closing in like a vice, I turned to my sister, my hand outstretched. Together, I murmured, and as she clasped my fingers, we pierced the veil of shadow, emerging as Oni, monstrous guardian against the terrors lurking beyond dawn. Yet deep down, a chilling thought ignited like a flame in the dark. I was never truly the hunter. No, I was the prey and becoming the prey. I had found my true purpose, and forevermore, the shadows would whisper my name, sung in an uncanny lullaby of both love and dread. Embrace the night.